Okay, so welcome to the deep dive. And today we're going deep on something that is, I think, really fundamental,
Yeah.
in the digital world. And that's, how do we make sure that the things we build online are open to everyone?
Yeah.
We're talking about accessible and inclusive UX design.
Right.
And we really want to give you, the listener, some really practical things to think about,
Yeah.
to take away from this, so that all those digital spaces that we're navigating are, truly seamless and enjoyable for everyone, regardless of, how they interact with it.
Absolutely. And our guide for this deep dive is Christopher Nguyen's article, Design for Accessibility, 7 Essential Principles for Inclusive UX Designs,
Right.
which, yeah, it's a really well-structured piece that gives us a lot of tangible steps to think about.
It does. And, this is not a niche topic, right?
Yeah.
This is,
Yeah.
this touches every single person who uses a website or an app. And, so when we talk about accessibility, we're really talking about creating better experiences, full stop.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
The first principle that Ngoyen highlights is prioritizing keyboard navigation.
Yeah, and, it's interesting to think about, while a lot of us
Hmm.
rely on a mouse or a trackpad,
Right.
that's not the reality for everyone.
Yeah.
And for some users, a keyboard is the primary way, maybe even the only way,
Yeah.
that they can navigate these digital interfaces.
Right.
So if a design isn't fully functional using just a keyboard, it's essentially creating a barrier.
Right. Right. So if we want to make sure that we're not inadvertently creating these barriers,
Yeah.
what do we need to be thinking about doing?
Yeah.
Well, Nguyen's article points to a few key actions.
Mhm.
First off, regularly checking our designs to make sure that absolutely everything,
Yeah.
from navigating, those top navigation menus. Yeah.
To filling out forms, to
Yeah.
using those interactive elements
Mm-hmm.
can be done
It's with a keyboard.
just with a keyboard.
Yeah. It's easy to overlook those things.
It really is.
Yeah.
Um, and, and that check needs to go beyond, can you get to it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The second crucial point here is the tab order.
Tab order. Yeah.
So when you're tabbing through a page,
Yeah.
does the focus move in a way that makes logical sense
Right.
with the visual layout?
Yeah.
Right. Because a jumbled tab order,
It can be really frustrating.
yeah, it's so incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
You can make it, essentially impossible to use
Right.
for someone relying on that.
For sure.
And then the third piece of this puzzle, which is so important, is having those really clear
Yeah.
visual focus indicators,
Mm-hmm.
right? That little highlight
Right.
or the
A
border
little outline.
that tells you where your focus is.
Without that, it's like, trying to find your way in the dark.
Absolutely.
Keyboard users need that clear visual cue
Yeah.
to know where they are.
Yeah. Think about it this way. When you try to navigate a familiar website
Mm-hmm.
using only the tab key,
Mm-hmm.
how easily can you tell which link or button has focus?
Right.
Is it immediately obvious? And if it's not clear to you,
Yeah.
imagine the experience for someone who relies solely on that.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to a principle that deals with how we perceive visual information,
Okay.
embracing sufficient color contrast.
This one might seem a little bit more maybe obvious,
Yeah, but
as we often think about making things, visually
crystal
clear.
clear.
But Ngaline's article really stresses that, while color is fantastic for aesthetics and even
Mhm.
conveying meaning, if we rely on it too heavily,
Too heavily.
we risk excluding a large portion of users,
Right.
particularly those with visual impairments.
Yeah. And color blindness affects a surprising number of people.
It does.
And there are different types of color blindness.
Right.
What's fascinating is that ensuring good color contrast doesn't just benefit those with a diagnosed visual impairment.
Right.
It actually improves readability for everyone.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah.
Even people with perfect vision, especially in situations where maybe the lighting's not great
Right.
or on screens with lower quality displays.
Right.
So it has broader benefits.
It does. So what are the actual practical steps here?
Yeah, so Ngoyen points us to using contrast checking tools
Yeah.
like WebAM's contrast checker
Right.
to actually measure the difference
Mm-hmm.
in luminance between the text and the background colors.
Right. Right. It's not just about, does it look okay?
Exactly.
There are specific ratios that
Yeah.
we need to be hitting
Yes,
to be truly accessible.
to meet that accessibility standard for sure.
Right.
And a related action is to avoid using color as the only way to convey important information.
Right, right.
So, for example, if you have a red status indicator for an error
Yeah.
and green for success,
Right.
you absolutely need to supplement that
Yeah.
with text labels or perhaps different shapes or patterns
Right.
so that everyone can understand the message regardless of their color vision.
That makes a lot of sense. And then finally, on the topic of color, Nguyen recommends testing our designs with color blindness simulators.
Yeah.
It's one thing to kind of, intellectually understand the concept of color blindness,
Understand it.
but to actually see your design
Yeah.
through the lens of someone with, deuteranopia or protanopia
Yeah.
can be incredibly revealing, right?
Yeah, it's powerful.
And help us catch those potential problems.
Yeah, it really shifts your perspective. You might think your color scheme is perfectly clear,
Right,
but then a quick simulation can show you how different it looks
right,
to a significant portion of your audience.
right.
Okay, so our third principle moves us into the realm of interactive elements.
Okay.
Make all interactive elements accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And Nguyen really emphasizes that, accessibility isn't just about this overall structure
Right.
of a website.
Right.
It's also about those smaller interactive bits and pieces,
Yeah.
like buttons, links, and form controls.
Yeah.
And these need to be understandable and usable by everyone, including those using screen readers.
Yeah. So, I think what's key to grasp here is, how a screen reader works, right?
Right.
So these assistive technologies,
Yeah.
they essentially read out the content of a web page
Mm-hmm.
to users who have visual impairments.
Right.
And so for these interactive elements to be accessible,
Mhm.
they need to provide the right kind of information
Yeah.
so that the screen reader can accurately convey,
Right.
its purpose and functionality to the
Right.
user. So in practical terms, what does this look like?
Yeah, great question.
Well, first off, Nguyen mentions making sure all buttons and controls are at decent size.
Yeah.
Right.
Large enough to interact with.
Large enough to
Yeah.
easily interact with. And
Yeah.
that's, a usability win for everybody.
It is, yeah.
Not just those with, motor impairments or something.
For sure.
But crucially, these elements need clear programmatically associated labels
Yes.
that screen readers can announce.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that leads us to the second key action here, which is using semantic HTML
Right.
and ARIA roles.
Okay.
So semantic HTML provides inherent meaning to different elements on a page, making it easier for screen readers to understand the structure and purpose of the content.
Okay, so an ARIA is.
ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications,
Okay.
and it allows us to add further context and information
Okay.
to dynamic elements or widgets that might not have direct semantic HTML equivalents.
Okay.
It's about providing that extra layer of information
Right.
for assistive technologies.
Gotcha.
So it's building upon that foundation.
Okay.
And then the third aspect here is providing clear feedback.
Right.
So when a user interacts with an element, let's say they click a button or submit a form,
Mm-hmm.
they need to know that their action has been registered.
Right. Right.
And this could be visual feedback, like a change in the button state, or auditory feedback.
Right.
This confirmation is vital for all users,
Right.
but particularly for those who might not be able to visually confirm that change on the screen.
Right. Right. Yeah, it builds that trust.
It does.
Right.
It builds trust and ensures the user feels in control.
Yeah. Okay. Our fourth principle is one that we hear about, a lot in accessibility circles.
Right.
Always, including ALT text for images.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And Nguyen rightly points out that while an image can often convey complex information quickly
Yeah.
for those who are sighted,
Yeah.
that information is completely inaccessible if you can't see it.
It's just not there.
Right.
Yeah.
So ALT text is the, textual alternative that bridges that gap.
Exactly. It fills in that gap.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about ALT text is that it's not just about describing what the image is.
Right.
It's about conveying the purpose and context of that image within the surrounding content.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a poorly written ALT text, for example, might describe the elements in a picture,
Right.
but fail to communicate why that image is there in the first
Yeah.
place.
Right. Right.
So it misses that critical piece.
Right. So Nguyen gives us some good pointers here.
Yeah.
First off, ALT text should be descriptive but also concise.
Concise, yeah.
To the point. It needs to give a clear idea of what the image shows and its function,
Right.
without being, overly wordy.
Right. No novels.
Right, right. And context is absolutely key.
Context.
As Nguyen mentions, if you have a product image
Yeah.
on, let's say, an e-commerce site,
Yeah.
the ALT text shouldn't just be, picture of a shoe.
Right. Here's a shoe.
Right. It needs to actually describe the product.
Describe it, yeah.
Right.
What kind of shoe?
The type of shoe,
The brand.
the brand, maybe some key features like color or material.
Yeah, you want to provide that same level of information
Right.
that a sighted user would get from seeing the image.
Right. And it's easy to forget those, those smaller things. But Nguyen also reminds us about icons,
Icons.
especially those that perform actions.
Right, right.
Like, that little magnifying glass for search.
Yeah, for search.
These need descriptive ALT text, too.
They do.
Explaining what they do.
Yeah. Right.
What does that icon do?
Because a screen reader user needs to know that that particular icon
Yeah.
will initiate a search. It's all about ensuring that every piece of content,
Yeah.
regardless of its format,
Yeah.
serves its intended purpose for everyone.
Right.
Okay, so now let's think about how motion
Okay.
can impact user experience
Mm-hmm.
with our fifth principle. Ensuring your animations are non-disruptive.
This is a fascinating one, I think.
It is, yeah.
Because when used well,
Right.
animations can really enhance an interface, right? Make it feel more engaging and intuitive.
Yeah.
But
Doesn't it?
as Nguyen points out,
Right.
Animations that are too rapid or excessive can actually cause problems for some users with, certain sensitivities.
Yeah, so the critical thing to remember here is that
Yeah.
while visual flourishes can be nice, they should never come at the expense of user comfort
Right.
or accessibility.
Right.
So for individuals with vestibular disorders or photosensitivity,
Yeah.
for example, rapid or strobing animations
Yeah.
can trigger really unpleasant
Yeah.
or even harmful reactions.
Right.
So we need to be mindful of that.
So what are the practical steps
Yeah.
you should take here?
Yeah.
Well, first up, Nguyen recommends providing user control
Feature controls.
to either reduce the intensity
Yes.
or completely turn off animations.
Yeah, giving the user that level of control
Yeah.
over their experience is always a good practice in UX.
is.
And then there's a specific guideline around flashing.
Okay.
Nguyen highlights the importance of avoiding elements that flash more than 3 times per second.
Okay.
This is a crucial recommendation
Yeah.
to prevent triggering seizures
Right.
in photosensitive users.
Right.
And beyond just that flashing,
Yeah.
Nguyen also points to the need to test designs
Mm-hmm.
for more general motion sensitivity issues.
Okay.
So this could include things like large parallax scrolling effects
Yeah.
or animations that might induce discomfort
Yeah.
or even motion sickness in some individuals.
Yep.
And testing with a diverse group of users can
Mhm.
help uncover these less obvious issues.
Right.
It's all about being mindful of
Yeah.
the potential physical impact of our designs
Yeah.
and providing ways for users to adapt the experience to their needs.
Right.
So our sixth principle
Okay.
focuses on making multimedia accessible,
Yeah.
creating transcripts and captions.
And this one is, pretty clear in its intent.
It is.
If you're using video or audio content,
Yeah.
you need to make it accessible to people who are deaf or hard of hearing,
Right.
as well as those who might be in environments where they just can't listen to the sound.
Yeah, exactly. You need to provide that flexibility.
Right.
And the fundamental idea here is to provide equivalent text-based alternatives
Right.
for any information that's
Mm.
conveyed through audio.
Right.
This ensures that everyone has access to the same content,
Yeah.
regardless of their ability to hear.
Right. Right. So, for video content, the key action here, as Nguyen emphasizes,
Yeah.
is to provide high quality captions.
Captions, yes.
And these need to be accurate. They need to be synchronized with the audio. And crucially, they need to be comprehensive.
Comprehensive.
Right.
That's a good word for it.
So this means, including speaker identification
Yeah.
and even, descriptions of non-speech sounds like
Oh.
music or sound effects
Yeah.
that are important for context.
That's a really important detail
Yeah.
about non-speech sounds.
Yeah.
They can often carry crucial information or emotional cues.
Right.
And if they're not included in the captions,
Right.
that understanding is lost for someone who can't hear them.
Right. Right.
And for purely audio content, like podcasts,
Yeah.
such as this,
Exactly. Yeah. That you're listening to right now.
Nguyen stresses the need for readily available transcripts.
Right. A transcript allows, someone who can't listen to the audio,
Yeah.
to still get all of that information.
Right.
And just like with captions, accuracy and easy accessibility are key
The
here.
accessibility,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
It needs to be easy to find.
The transcript should be a true representation of the spoken content
It's spoken word.
and should be easy to find alongside the audio.
And finally, Nguyen reminds us to get feedback
Yeah.
on our captions and transcripts
Right.
from users who actually rely on them.
Right.
This user testing is invaluable
Yeah, absolutely.
in making sure
Yeah.
as accessibility features are truly effective and meet the needs of the intended audience.
Right. Our seventh and final principle
Okay.
brings us to the power of language.
Yeah.
Using clear, simple language in your UI copy.
And Nguyen states pretty plainly that in user experience, clarity is paramount.
Right.
Overly complex language and jargon can create barriers and confuse users.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that using plain language isn't just beneficial for users with cognitive disabilities or lower literacy levels. It actually improves the experience for everyone.
Yeah.
When information is easy to understand, it reduces cognitive load for all users, making the entire experience smoother and more efficient.
Right. So, the first key action here is to actively choose plain language.
Plain language.
Right. Avoid unnecessary jargon, technical terms, and overly complex sentence structures unless you're providing clear and concise explanations.
Yeah. So, it's best to assume that your audience might not be experts in the subject matter.
Right.
And consistency is also vital.
Yeah.
Nguyen emphasizes the importance of using the same terminology throughout your entire website or application.
Yeah.
Using different words for the same thing
Yeah.
can easily lead to confusion and frustration.
Yeah. That's a great point. If you call something, a widget in one place and a component in another place, it can be really disorienting for the user.
Absolutely.
Right.
So consistency matters.
And finally, Nguyen recommends conducting user testing with a diverse group of people to specifically assess how understandable your language is.
Yeah.
Right. And this should include individuals with varying reading abilities and cognitive styles.
Right. So a wide range of abilities.
Yeah.
And this kind of targeted testing can reveal surprising insights into how different users interpret your content.
Right.
And highlight areas where the language might be unclear or ambiguous.
Right.
It's a really valuable step
It is.
in ensuring inclusive communication.
Yeah. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the essential principles of accessible UX design, let's quickly just run through those 7 key takeaways from Christopher Nguyen's article one more time.
Let's do it.
Prioritize keyboard navigation.
Number 1.
Embrace sufficient color contrast.
Yes.
Make all interactive elements accessible.
Number 3.
Always include ALT text for images.
Right.
Ensure your animations are non-disruptive.
Wow.
Create transcripts and captions for multimedia content.
Thanks.
And use clear, simple language in your UI copy.
Number 7. And it's important to remember that while we've discussed these principles individually, they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And thinking about them holistically will lead to truly inclusive digital experiences.
Right.
By integrating these considerations into our design processes, we're not just meeting a baseline standard.
Right.
We're actively creating more usable and enjoyable products for everyone.
Absolutely. Ultimately, designing with accessibility in mind isn't just about accommodating some users. It's about creating a better experience for all users.
For all users.
A well-structured, easily navigable, and clearly communicated interface benefits everyone.
Benefits everyone.
Regardless of their, individual abilities.
Absolutely.
So as you go about your day, think about one specific area from this deep dive where you can immediately apply one of these principles, whether it's in your own work or in how you interact with the digital world.
Absolutely. And what small adjustment could you make that might have a huge positive impact on someone else's experience?
Right.
Often it's those small intentional changes.
Yeah, it really is.
That make the biggest difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So think about that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.